Hey guys, it's Lori. Please pardon my appearance. It is very early in the morning. It's like 2:30 in the morning on December 23rd. As you know, you guys have been doing this raffle and stuff to try to raise money. And I'm selling gift certificates. It's not too late to get your gift certificate. It's not too late Christmas Day to get your gift certificate. You know what? It's not too late to get a gift certificate any day of the year because these kinds of gift certificates can be life changing. Anyhow, um, I have a deadline. The deadline is today. So I'm not up because I don't feel anxious. I don't. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Um, I can tell other people. I can't tell myself. But I know one thing. I have come to some of my own epiphanies, and yeah, anyway, doesn't matter. That's not what I want to talk about. I found out some news. Well, it wouldn't be last night now, it would be the night before. I was just kind of looking around online, and I happened to come upon a comment that mentions a name of somebody that I knew many, many years ago, kind of grew up with, dated a little bit, and I was like, wonder if it's the same person. I often have wondered throughout the years, whatever happened to this person and that person and blah, blah, blah. And I found out some pretty shocking news about this person, and it kind of really blew my mind. So I guess it's kind of a story time, but I want to incorporate some stuff that I think about as far as soul wounds and um, places we find ourselves in life and that kind of thing. So stay tuned. Hey guys, I'm back. I'm really tired. It's been a couple hours. I haven't slept all night. And like I said, I don't feel anxious. Like I don't feel it on the outside. But maybe that's what it is. I just haven't slept. I've been praying and praying and praying. Even people who understand the universal law, have total faith and everything, we still have problems in life. And I was just talking with my oldest son earlier tonight, and he asked me. He was talking to some of his mentors. He's, my son was at one time a very staunch atheist, and now he's come to be a very devout believer. And as he grows in his walk of faith, he asked me, are the attacks worse? And I would say yes. I would imagine any believer you talk to that is a true believer and not into the prosperity gospel and stuff would say yes. Because the gifts of the spirit, the fruit of the spirit, is not necessarily the same kind of gifts of this world. So what you'll notice about somebody with that's a true believer is they'll have the fruits of the spirit. Yeah, they still go through hard times. They're still going to get upset. They're still going to get angry. But the difference is they're not going to seek out vengeance. They're not going to let the sun set on their anger. They're not going to hold on to resentment. They're going to get through by faith, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm off on a whole different tangent. That's not what I wanted to talk about. So, like I was telling you, I'm tired, so I don't even know if this video will go up. Forgive me if I'm rambling. I don't normally do story time stuff, and I've got some other supernatural paranormal stuff I want to share with you, but that's another video. So I'm, scrolling. I was watching missing person thing. For those of you that don't know me or haven't watched my channel, I do a lot of work with missing persons, unsolved crime, and that kind of stuff. And so I'm just reviewing an old case and something that somebody had put out there about that case. And I'm looking through the comments and I see somebody's name from many, many moons ago from the old neighborhood. And could it be the same person? Now, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to get into the whole thing of what he did and all of that. So I'm going to call him Sam. So I see him, first and last name. And I'm like, wonder what he did. I'm going to look him up, wonder if it's the same person, because his name, Sam, and his last name, like Sam Smith, okay? It's a really common name. I'm like, it could be somebody else. So I look up Sam Smith and I look up what happened. You know, I kind of went, I don't know if there was a link in that or not, but anyway, I found it. And turns out Sam Smith did some pretty rotten stuff. He ended up killing somebody and really, really bad stuff. From what I could take from what I read and then what I prayed about it and tried to psych in, I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, what I got from between, you know, what I got and what I read was that he is a raging alcoholic, a severe alcoholic that probably is like a blackout kind of quote unquote drunk. And please forgive me, I'm not, you know, forgive my words since I'm tired. I'm not judging anybody. I would say a good portion of the people that I love, if not 100%, very close to that, are addicted to something, addicts of some kind, you know. So I have, you're not hearing me put down addiction, you know. But I think that's what happened. It sounded like that, and possibly other drugs too, but it sounded like he had a rage inside of him, and then you add alcohol, which is what the article said, and also what I got in spirit. So even if there were other drugs involved, I believe alcohol is the culprit. Like, that's his main vice, phobia, danger, poison. Poison's the word I'm looking for. I don't know if he has any, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know if he had a problem way back when I knew him. You know, because we didn't look at it that way back then. Okay. And so this is what it appeared to me, that he had a rage and something going on anyway. And then he would get blackout drunk and the rage would come out. And he hurt people, and he hurt more than one person. And so I look up the picture to make sure this is the same Sam Smith that I knew. And sure enough, I'm like, so now I'm sitting back, and it actually made me feel like shocked. I felt like it got punched in the gut. And the reason I did is this isn't just somebody I knew and dated, you know, as a teenager, because honestly, I did date him, but I was so young back then. I mean, I was out of my parents' house as a very young teenager, and I was still in my parents' house when I knew him. But the thing is I knew him for years prior to that. And I don't know what his, I mean, I didn't know him like to go to his house like that, but we grew up in the same neighborhood. And I knew, you know, I knew him pretty well. Him and his older brother. He had another brother I did not know that well. I mean, I knew who he was, but I didn't know him. We didn't hang out. I didn't hang out with his older brother either. But interestingly enough, I would have thought, just from what I knew, because I used to think his older brother was better looking. And Sam Smith, if you ever see this, I apologize, but he was. I don't know what happened to him. I have a sneaking suspicion that he passed away. I just felt that, and I have no proof, no evidence. But I think he might have. I don't even know if his dad was around. And I know his mom was. I know he was close to his mom. I know he was close to his brothers. I don't think he did any time in juvie, at least not when I was still in the neighborhood. Now, keep in mind, I moved away really young. You couldn't move out that young today. You couldn't. You just couldn't do it. You know what? I look back at the kid, like I look at kids today, or even my kids who are now technically adults, and I look back at when they were the age group that I'm talking about, and you know, some of my friends' grandchildren that have reached that age, and just some of the, you know, kids, some of my clients and friends' children that are that age, and I'm thinking, no way, they're babies. Like, you know, I look at a 30-year-old as a baby, but these kids are like babies. And the stuff that we were doing at that age. Okay, disclaimer. I'm going to put a few in this video, but first disclaimer, I do not condone anything we did when we were younger. And for some reason, I don't know if it was the time. I don't know if it's this damn shift that changed everything. I don't know if it was just our generation. And I don't know if I'm 100% wrong and it's just my perspective. Because I would imagine people my age also were very young at that age. I don't know. I really don't know. But it seems to me that when I was, my memories of back then, I'm talking about 13, 14, 15, I was out of the house by almost 16, 15, almost 16, okay? So I moved back in with my dad, ironically, but that's a whole other story. I did that later as an older teenager, but, and you know what, honestly, no, I'm not even going to say that because it'll make my parents look bad. My parents did the best they could with what they had, what they knew, you know, just as most people do. I had a really, okay, so anyway, so, yeah, you know, that's disclaimer number one, and I do not condone any of the behavior that I did as a youngin', or any of us did. Disclaimer number two, I am not excusing this man's behavior at all. Sam Smith killed somebody, and he also did some other really horrific things, and I am not condoning it, nor am I excusing it, nor am I making excuses for him. It just brought my mind to thinking, you know. I mean, we all got to take accountability for what we've done, especially when you get to be an adult. So many people will go back and say, well, my mom was a narcissist. My mom abused me. I was sexually abused. I was, involved in satanic stuff. The law got on me, blah, 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 whatever it is. All of those things are reasons for who we are. They're not excuses, okay? So, disclaimer. I'm not condoning his behavior. I'm not blaming alcohol for his behavior. However, there are a couple things that brought to my attention. And again, disclaimer number 3, and I know I already said it, but I know what addiction is like. Every man I've ever loved has been an alcoholic or worse. I don't mean to say worse. Alcoholic or alcoholic drug addict. In recovery or not. Because, you know, I remember dating one guy and he was sober and I thought, well, this is different. And it was. Not necessarily in a good way. But, you know, he was an alcoholic. So, and I can honestly say that every man I've ever loved was an alcoholic. Maybe that's why I'm single. I don't know. Anyhow. So I'm not blaming this on alcohol. I'm not condoning alcohol. I'm not putting down any kind of addiction, whether it be alcohol, food addiction, drug addiction, any kind of addiction. I have a very addictive personality. But for the grace of God, there go I. Okay? Because I also had a lot of rage. I dealt with it in different ways. I manifested it through physical illness. I went the other way, and I'm not saying, you know, I lost touch with this guy years ago when I was probably 15 years old. So I don't know what happened to him, but I'm just going, it made me go back to the old neighborhood and think about this stuff and bring me up to date with my kids and other young people that I know. And I just pray that my grandchildren and other people's grandchildren and the younger generation don't get caught up in this stuff, that something changes, that we shift into a better reality, or that people wake the heck up. Anyhow. See, I still have anger inside me, but let me explain a little bit. And this might turn out to be a long video. And if it does, I apologize. Or maybe I'll make a part 2. So it just got me thinking, okay? So let me just explain me and Sam Smith first. Okay, so I knew him. I don't know when he moved into the neighborhood. The neighborhood I grew up in, I didn't know this at the time. I started to recognize it as I got a little older. When I was a real little kid, I didn't know. I don't think anybody else in the neighborhood knew either until we got older. But I grew up in the hood, okay? I wasn't in the projects, but I would almost say it was worse than the projects. Now, of course, like, we didn't have roaches or bugs or anything. Everybody was clean, but everybody was poor. We were poor for the neighborhood. So we were like poorer than poor. I didn't know it at the time. Like I said, kids don't know they're poor. As long as they're taken care of, they don't know. Not only was it a poor neighborhood, when I call it the hood, I'm not, and again, another disclaimer, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. But compared to some of the people I've talked to in my adult life, I guess it was a pretty rough neighborhood. I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire, so how rough could it be, right? New Hampshire in the late 70s, early 80s. But it was rough for New Hampshire. Now, Manchester, New Hampshire is pretty rough, okay? Nashua, New Hampshire is pretty rough. Back then, I guess it was too, when I think about the stories, but I didn't see it that way because that's all I knew, okay? We didn't even, the way Manchester was set up then, we had the east side and the west side, all right? And then we had the south side and the north end, or south end, north end, east side, west side. West side, poor. East side, midtown, poor, for the most part. Upper east side, not poor. And then we had south end. Those kids were kind of snobby. Some of the west side, we went to school with kids from this little, if you're not from here, it's like a bedroom community to Manchester, but it's wealthy. And we went to school with those kids. Weird, right? Well, high school. I went to a private school in my younger years, but I went to a public high school. And that public high school also accommodated some bedroom towns. But especially this one, I remember because they were wealthy. And we were so poor. It was like a complete dichotomy. And they put us together, I'm sorry about that. My camera ran out of space. Anyway, so like I was saying, we went to, anyway, that doesn't matter. I'm going to end up doing 2 parts because this is going to be too long because I haven't even got to my thought yet. So let me talk about Sam Smith now. So I knew him growing up, and he was also, I'm assuming he was poor. I mean, he probably didn't know it, but he lived in the same neighborhood. None of us could have been wealthy or even middle class. It was a lower middle class neighborhood. And like I said, we were poor for that neighborhood. I'm assuming his family probably was too, but maybe not. I don't know. I know he was close to his mom and his brothers. I don't know if his dad was around. Like, I didn't go to his house. We hung out outside. That was weird too. A lot of the people that I hung out with, like all my life, I didn't hang out with in school. Really weird. But I always went to private school while everybody else went to public school. I don't know why. Have no clue. I came from an extremely abusive household, so I was out as much as I could be. I don't know that he did. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I lived in a rough neighborhood. It was a common occurrence for someone to come up to me, and, if you got kids in the room, make them leave right now. Pause the video and get them out because it's kind of nasty, but it was a common occurrence for... what men used to do is they'd drive up, they'd ask for directions, okay? And you got little Miss Naive over here. My friends weren't as naive. Why was I not street smart? I don't know. Growing up there, I should have been, but I wasn't. And I would go right up to their car. I learned as I got a little older to stay back a little bit, but still, I went too close. And, they'd ask for directions. And here I am giving off directions because I'm looking them in the eye. I still have a tendency to do this. When somebody comes up to me, I look them in the eye. And they would be, doing their thing with their pants down. So I'd back off. I didn't report any of that. I had a friend who got jumped on her way to school and molested. And that was, right in daylight. I mean, it was morning time. She was walking to school. I was brutally raped and left for dead. I remember one time she had a physically abusive dad, an alcoholic. Interesting. And we were down, there was like a river by our house, and you go down a hill, and that was paved, but then you could go off by the railroad tracks and go down by the river and blah, blah, blah. That was all woods until you got to the river. And we're standing on the road part, and this guy comes up to us, right? Young guy, probably, we were probably 12 or 13 at that time. I don't know, somewhere around there. And you should have seen the things we were talking about. At that age, I had never seen the male anatomy. I certainly didn't know anything about sex, but she did. And I always liked like the older boys. They were like 16, 17. I must have been such an annoyance to them, like hanging out with them, this little girl. And she was dating this guy that was older. And I mean, we're sitting there talking about her having oral sex. He wanted her to have oral sex with him. She didn't know what it was. She asked me what it was. I didn't know. So I promised her I'd ask my crush, who was, I think he was like 16 at the time, maybe 15, I don't know. He seemed a lot older. And I asked him. I said, promise you won't laugh at me? He's like, I would never laugh at you. And I asked him and he laughed at me. I'll never forget that. I was humiliated. But, so we're talking about this down there. And her dad had just kind of been rough with her. So I'm trying to calm her down and stuff. We were on the pavement. We weren't even in the woods. And this man comes up to us. I'm guessing he was mid-20s or so. And we were young, like I said. I don't know. Maybe we were 13. Maybe we were 12. I don't know. Somewhere around there. And she was more developed than I was. I was like flat-chested, skinny. I still looked like a kid. And she didn't, she had a different shape. Anyhow, even way back then, I put myself as less than. It's amazing how I look at my soul wounds. But he came up to us and he's just standing there. Now again, I'm looking at him in the eye like, hey, how can we help you? What do you need? Because we were talking to each other and he just kind of stood there with us. He didn't say a word. And I'm looking at him and I'm just staring at him and I'm like, hi. And I turn around, next thing I know, she's gone. She bolted up the hill. She didn't even say anything to me. She bolted. So I look at him, and of course now I know something's wrong, but still naive. And I look at his eyes. I'm looking at him in the eyes, and I'm like, hi. And he smiled at me, but like it was like a little creepy smile. And I just turned around, saw that she bolted, so I turned around, looked back at him. He smiled, and I kind of just looked down, like real slowly. It feels like slow motion when I think of it in the memory. And I looked down, and that was the very first male anatomy I've ever seen. And it was so disgusting. I'm surprised I ever had children, honestly. I don't know. Now that I know, there was something wrong with that man, seriously. But he had it out, and I guess that's all he wanted to do was flash us, because I mean, it was like everything was slow motion. It took me at least a good 5 seconds after I saw. And that was, God only knows how long it took me to actually look down. We're probably talking about a good 30 or 40 seconds here. The guy could have grabbed me, had me in the, but he didn't. So I guess he was just an exhibitionist. And I took off and ran. Never even thought, hey, thanks, friend, for leaving me there, but whatever. One of our, I don't want to call her a friend because she wasn't a friend of mine, but one of the people in the neighborhood actually was viciously assaulted down there later. So it was a dangerous place. I mean, this was all commonplace stuff. Drugs and alcohol were rampant. The biggest drugs back then, around that time that I knew of in the neighborhood, were, I think, like hallucinogenics, and I think a lot of people, which I was not, but a lot of people I think were doing, we're talking about the 80s, so probably coke, right? Pot, alcohol. Everybody drank alcohol. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 11 years old, and I mean really smoking, not just like stealing, like really smoking. I remember that friend I was just talking about, her little brother, he was a couple years younger than me, and he was already looking at alcoholism. He used to sit and drink alone, probably at 9 or 10 years old. So I grew up in a rough neighborhood, as did Sam. Sam and I knew each other. We hung out all the time. We actually even dated. I was probably 15 or so. We never were intimate. I mean, we made out and stuff. But I got to tell you, it shocked me. It was like a punch in the gut to find out what he had become, because I can honestly say he was one of the most gentle. I mean, I can't call him a man, he was a boy then, but he treated me so well. He never even he never was rude. He was always really gentlemanly. He respected my boundaries. He lifted me up. Now, back then, if I recall correctly, I think he was already drinking. I, by the grace of God, never liked the taste of alcohol. So, yeah, I was at the parties, I just didn't drink. I mean, I'm not going to say I never did, but it wasn't my thing. So, I don't know what happened in the meantime, but that's what got me to thinking about the journeys that we take and the people that we become. And again, I'm not going to blame alcohol. I'm not going to blame poverty. I'm not going to blame abuse. For what he did, he did. And what I've done in my life, I've done. And everybody else, we all have to take accountability. But it led me to this cycle. And that's what I'll talk about in part 2, because this has gone on way too long. I know I'm yapping, maybe because I've been up all night. Anyway, I don't even know if this will make it to be uploaded, but watch part 2 if you're interested in the rest of the story. I'll talk to you soon. And, you know, Sam Smith is a fake name, but this is a real person that I really cared about and that really cared about me, or at least I thought so. And regardless of how young we were, like I said, it was different back then. And, yeah, he was just always so good to me. And so, I don't know how he was with other people, honestly. It just freaked me out. It was like a punch in the gut. Alright, guys, watch part 2. It'll be the rest of my thoughts on this story time. Alright, guys, I'll talk to you soon. If you don't see part 2, or if I don't talk to you before then, today is December 23rd. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, so be safe, be merry, be happy. Tell the people you love that you love them. And know that gift certificates, I need to raise that money by 4 o'clock today, so buy a gift certificate, prepay package, join a raffle, you know, buy a couple raffle tickets, whatever, or don't. You know, say a prayer for me and for my family. Thanks. I'll talk to you guys soon. I love you guys.